The ambush came from the wrong direction. I knew immediately. Not because I am exceptional. Not because I have some ability that others don't, but because I had studied that route for 11 days. I knew every approach, every sight line, every position from which an ambush was possible and every position from which it was not. The direction they came from was not possible. Not unless someone had told them where we would be, and nobody outside our unit knew where we would be. Nobody, except the 6 of us. I lay behind a ridge with rounds coming, in from a direction. That made no tactical sense, and I thought, with the particular clarity that danger sometimes produces, someone told them. Someone in my unit, someone I had been living beside, eating beside, trusting with my life for 8 months. One of 6 people. I just didn't know which one. Yet, my name is Captain Sarah Reeves. I had served in the United States Army for 12 years. 2 previous deployments, a record built on the kind of consistent performance that does not announce itself loudly, but that the people who matter notice and remember. My 3rd deployment was to a region I will not name. The mission, the specific operation I am about to tell you about, was one I had been planning for 11 days. A precision operation, small unit, 6 people, including me. The kind of work that requires absolute trust between everyone involved, because the margin for error is essentially 0. I trusted every one of them. I had served with 3 of them before. Lieutenant Price, 7 years in, the kind of soldier who does exactly what is required and nothing less and nothing more. Reliable in the particular way of someone who has no surprises in them. Sergeant Cole, 4 years, young but sharp. The best eye in the unit for things that don't look right. Corporal Harris, 9 years. Older than her rank suggested, someone who had made choices that had slowed her promotion, but that had not diminished her skill. The other 2 were newer to me. Sergeant First Class Mitchell, transferred in 3 months before the deployment, came with a strong file and a quiet manner that I had read as professionalism. And Private First Class Daniels, 8 months in the Army, my youngest, the one I had spent the most time with simply because the youngest always require the most attention. 6 people. One of them was talking to someone they should not have been talking to, and I did not know, when that ambush hit from the wrong direction, which one. What I knew, lying behind that ridge, running through everything I had been told about that route, eliminating every possibility except the one that could not be eliminated, was that the mission had been compromised, that someone in my unit was the source, and that whatever happened in the next few hours, I was going to have to function, completely, professionally, at full capacity, alongside the person who had tried to get us killed. We got out. I will not detail the extraction, operational security, and the simple fact that it is not where this story lives. What I will tell you is that all 6 of us came out of that ridge, injured. 2 of us, including me, with wounds that required treatment. But alive. We were alive, and one of us had tried to make sure we weren't. Something went wrong, Price said when we were out, stating the obvious, in the way of someone who needs to say it out loud before they can process it. Yes, I said. The direction? I know, I said. We looked at each other, and I watched, carefully, in the particular way of someone who has just decided to pay attention to everything. The faces of the other 4 as the same understanding moved through them. Confusion. Shock. The beginning of the same calculation I had already completed. One of us. I said nothing more. Not then. Not in the extraction. Not in the debrief that followed. A preliminary debrief. With people I had assessed as trustworthy, during which I reported what had happened without reporting what I suspected. Not yet. I needed to be certain. And I needed to be certain before anyone else knew I was looking. I have 11 years of experience reading people. Not in the dramatic way of movies, not the ability to look at someone and know their deepest secret from the way they hold their coffee cup, but the practical, accumulated skill of someone who has spent 11 years in environments where reading people correctly was a professional requirement. I started watching, all 5 of them, simultaneously, with the particular undivided attention of someone who has decided that the most important thing happening in their world right now is what is happening in this room, in these faces, in these small behavioral signals that most people produce without knowing. Price? Steady. The same steady he always was. No change in baseline behavior. No new patterns. Cole, shaken. Visibly, genuinely shaken in the way of someone who has been in an ambush and is processing it. The shaking looked real because it was real. Cole's reactions had always been transparent, which was occasionally a liability in the field and was currently an asset. Harris, quiet. Quieter than usual. But Harris was always quiet after operations. It was her pattern. Mitchell on the transfer 3 months in. He was professional, composed, perhaps too composed for someone who had just survived what we had survived. Perhaps. Daniels and my youngest, 8 months in. She had been crying after the extraction. Quietly, turned away, the way young soldiers cry when they do not want anyone to see. She had apologized for it. I had told her not to. I watched all 5 of them for 48 hours, and at the end of 48 hours I had not narrowed it down the way I had hoped. What I had was a feeling, the particular feeling of someone whose instincts have been developed over 11 years and are telling them something that the evidence has not yet confirmed. Mitchell, not because he was composed. Composure by itself means nothing. I was composed. Price was composed, Harris was composed. Composure is a professional skill. It was something smaller than that, a hesitation in one conversation that lasted perhaps half a second longer than it should have. A question he asked, framed as casual, delivered as casual, about the timeline of our investigation into what had gone wrong. The question itself was not suspicious. The timing of it was. I went to Colonel Washington. Washington had commanded our forward operating base for 2 years. He was not a man who made fast decisions. He was a man who made correct ones, which is considerably more valuable. I had worked with him before and trusted him with the particular trust of someone who has seen another person under pressure and knows how they respond. I told him what I suspected. Not the feeling, the specifics. The direction of the ambush, the elimination of every other possibility, the behavioral observations, the question Mitchell had asked and the timing of it. Washington listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "If you're right," he said, "we need to be certain before we move. If you're wrong, and I'm not saying you are the damage to Mitchell's career and to this unit's cohesion is significant." "I know," I said. "What do you need?" he said. "Access to his communications," I said. "Properly authorized, by the book. Everything documented." "How long?" he said. "Give me a week," I said. He gave me the week. What the communications review found: authorized, documented, reviewed by people with the appropriate clearance. I will not detail entirely. What I will tell you is that it was there. Not obvious. Mitchell was careful, had been careful for a considerable time, but not careful enough. There were patterns, contacts, a structure of communication that, examined by people who knew what they were looking for, told a story that could not be explained away. Mitchell had been passing information, not for ideology, not for belief in any cause, for money. A significant amount of money, transferred in ways that were designed to be difficult to trace and that were, in the end, not difficult enough. I had been right, which meant, and I sat with this for a long time, in the particular way that being right about something terrible requires that Mitchell had known our route, had passed it, had known what he was passing it toward, had sat beside me in that extraction, injured and alive, and said nothing. Washington called me into his office on the 7th day. He looked at me across his desk. "You were right," he said. I nodded. "Are you okay?" he said. I thought about it honestly. "Not yet," I said. "But I will be." Mitchell was arrested on a Thursday morning. I was not there when it happened. I had been asked to be elsewhere, which I understood and accepted. The process that follows something like this is not one that benefits from the presence of the person who uncovered it. What I was told afterward, by Washington, in a conversation that was brief and complete in the way of two people who have been through something significant together, it was that Mitchell had been cooperative, that the full extent of what he had passed, and to whom, was being worked through by people whose job it was to work through exactly that the ambush had not been the first time, that it had been the third. I sat with that, the third time, which meant that the two previous operations I had not been part of, operations conducted by other people in other units, had also been compromised. People had been hurt because of information that had originated from within, because of money. I thought about the 8 months I had served alongside Mitchell. The meals, the briefings, the particular intimacy of a small unit on a long deployment, the kind of closeness that develops between people who share the specific experience of being far from home and depending on each other for things that matter. I had trusted him. He had used that trust as a resource. The proceedings that followed were not public. These things rarely are, at the level at which they occurred. What I know is that they were thorough, that the people who needed to face consequences faced them, that the network Mitchell had been part of was, over the following months, significantly disrupted. I was asked to provide testimony. I did, completely, with the same methodical attention I had brought to every other part of this. My unit, the 5 remaining members, continued. We completed the deployment. Not the same, not after what had happened, but together. Price and Cole and Harris and Daniels, 4 people who had survived an ambush that should not have happened and who had, in the months that followed, rebuilt the trust that one person had fractured. Daniels came to find me the day before we rotated home. She was not crying this time. She stood in front of me with the particular composure of someone who has been through something and come out the other side of it, changed in ways they have not yet fully mapped. "How did you know?" she said, "that it was him? How did you know where to look?" I thought about it. "I didn't know," I said. "Not at first. I just knew the direction of the ambush was wrong, and I followed that until I understood why." She nodded. "Is that what you always do?" she said. "Yes," I said. "When something is wrong, you follow it. You don't stop following it until you understand." She looked at me for a moment. "I want to be like that," she said. "Eventually?" "You already are," I said. "You just don't know it yet." She went back to her bunk. I stood outside for a while, in the particular quiet of a base at night. The stars in a sky that looked different here than it looked at home. And I thought about trust, about what it means to give it completely, about what it costs when it is used as a resource, about the specific, irreplaceable thing that is lost when someone takes the trust of people who depend on them and turns it into a transaction, about the direction of that ambush, and about the fact that I had followed it. Here is what an ambush from the wrong direction and 8 months beside someone I should not have trusted taught me. When something is wrong, you will know. Not always immediately, not always clearly, but somewhere in you something will register. A direction that doesn't make sense. A hesitation that lasts half a second too long. A question asked at the wrong moment. Follow it. Do not talk yourself out of it. Do not give comfort more weight than truth. Follow it until you understand. And then, with every piece of documentation and authorization and institutional support you can gather, react. My closest friend on the mission was selling our location. I found out when the ambush hit from the wrong direction, and I followed that, carefully, completely, by the book, until justice arrived on a Thursday morning. and everything that had been passed in secret came into the light.